The baby swapper. In a small town called Lagro, there was a hospital named Hope Clinic. Many people in the town trusted the clinic because it was the biggest hospital around. Women came to Hope Clinic to give birth because they believed the nurses were kind and the doctors were very skilled. But what the people did not know was that a terrible secret hid behind the walls of Hope Clinic. One day, a woman named Mrs. Choma came to the hospital to give birth. She was very happy because she and her husband, Mr. Emeka, had been waiting for a baby for many years. She was in a lot of pain, but she knew that soon she would be holding her baby in her arms. The nurses took her to a room, and soon, with the help of the doctor, Mrs. Choma gave birth to a healthy baby boy. She was so happy and wanted to see her baby immediately. But then, something strange happened. The nurse who was holding her baby whispered to the doctor, and they exchanged a quick look. The doctor then turned to Mrs. Choma and said, "You need to rest now. We will take care of the baby and bring him to you soon." Mrs. Choma felt something was not right, but she was too tired to argue. She closed her eyes, hoping to see her baby soon. Hours passed and still no one brought her baby to her. When she asked, the nurses told her, "Your baby is not feeling well. We need to check on him more." Mrs. Choma became very worried and she began to cry. Meanwhile, another woman named Mrs. Ezinne, who had given birth to a baby girl, was also waiting. She heard the crisis of Mrs. Choma and wondered what was happening. She was also told by the nurses that her baby girl was not feeling well and that they needed to do more tests. Mrs. Ezinne, like Mrs. Choma, became scared and started crying too. Little did these women know that in a secret room, Nurse Bella, who was known for her sweet smile, was making a phone call. She whispered, "Yes, we have two babies here. One is a boy and the other is a girl. Both are healthy. How much will you pay?" The person on the other end of the call replied, "We will pay a lot. Just make sure no one finds out. We will come to pick them up at night." Nurse Bella nodded and smiled. She hung up the phone and walked back to the ward with a fake smile on her face. She went to Mrs. Choma's room and told her, "I am sorry, but your baby boy is very sick. He might not make it. We are trying our best." Mrs. Choma screamed in pain. "No, no, no, not my baby," she cried. She tried to get up from her bed, but she was too weak. The nurse left her crying and went to Mrs. Ezinne's room. To Mrs. Ezinne, she said, "Your baby girl is very sick. We need to move her to another hospital." Mrs. Ezinne began to cry too. "What do you mean? How can my baby be sick? I heard her cry when she was born. She was fine." The nurse shook her hand and said, "Babies can get sick very fast, but don't worry. We will do everything we can to save her." Then she left, leaving Mrs. Ezinne in tears. At night, when everyone was asleep, Nurse Bella and another nurse named Nurse Stella went to the secret room where the babies were kept. They wrapped the babies in blankets and sneaked out of the hospital. They went to the back gate where a black car was waiting for them. They handed the babies to a man in a dark coat. He gave them a bag full of money. Nurse Bella and Nurse Stella smiled as they counted the money. They did not care about the crying babies or the crying mothers. They only cared about the money. The next day, Mrs. Choma and Mrs. Ezinne were both told that their babies had. They cried and cried, but there was nothing they could do. The hospital gave them certificates, and the nurses pretended to be sorry, but inside they were happy because they knew they would get more money. Months went by, and many more women came to Hope Clinic to give birth. Some of the babies were sold, while others were swapped. One day, a woman named Mrs. Benita gave birth to a baby boy. She was very happy, but when she woke up from sleep, the nurse told her she had given birth to a girl. Mrs. Benita was confused. "But I saw my baby. He was a boy," she shouted. The Nurse Uche, said calmly, "No, you were mistaken. You were tired and did not see clearly. Your baby is a girl." Mrs. Benita did not believe it, but the nurse insisted. Mrs. Benita was given a baby girl, and she had no choice but to accept her. In another room, a woman named Miss Amina was told she had given birth to a boy, even though she was sure she had a girl. But when she tried to complain, the nurses told her she must be grateful and not question them. They gave her a baby boy, and she too had no choice but to accept him. One day, a new nurse named Nurse Amara started working at the hospital. She was young and innocent. She did not know about the things happening at the hospital. But one day, she noticed something strange. She saw Nurse Bola handling a baby to a man in a black coat at night. Nurse Amara was curious and decided to follow them. She hid behind some bushes and listened. She heard the man say, "Make sure you don't get caught. The people in this town trust this hospital, but if they find out, it will be the end of all of us." Nurse Amara was shocked. She quickly ran back to the hospital, and the next day, she decided to speak up. She went to the hospital director, Dr. Keke, and told him everything she had seen. At first, Dr. Keke did not believe her. "Are you sure, Amara? This is a big accusation," he said. But Nurse Amara insisted. "I am sure, sir. I saw it with my own eyes. They are selling babies and swapping them too." Dr. Keke decided to investigate. He secretly installed cameras in the hospital to catch the nurses in the act. A week later, the cameras caught everything. They saw Nurse Bella and Nurse Stella selling babies at night and swapping them during the day. Dr. Keke was shocked and angry. He called the police immediately. The police came to the hospital and arrested Nurse Bella and Nurse Stella and others involved. They were taken away in handcuffs, and the town was in shock. Many women who had given birth at Hope Clinic came forward, crying and asking questions. "Was my baby sold? Was my baby swapped?" they asked, tears rolling down their faces. The hospital was closed, and Dr. Keke promised to help find the stolen babies. He worked with the police to trace the people who had bought the babies. It was a hard and long journey, but one by one, the babies were found and returned to their real mothers. The town of Lagro learned a big lesson. Many mothers became more careful. They learned to always check their babies after birth and not to trust blindly. They started asking more questions and staying alert. They also learned to help and support each other, knowing that can hit anywhere, even in places that seem safe. They also learned that going to the hospital, you need to go with your husband or a trusted person to stay with you to monitor your baby after birth. Mrs. Sharma and Mrs. Ezine were among the lucky ones who got their babies back. They cried tears of joy and hugged their babies tightly. They thanked Nurse Amara for her courage in speaking up. Nurse Amara became a hero in the town, and many people thanked her for saving their babies. She taught everyone that speaking up against wrongdoings, even when it was scary, it is the right thing to do. The town also learned that not everyone who smiles at you is your friend, and not everyone who wears a uniform is there to help you. And so, the story of Hope Clinic became a lesson for all. Mothers became more careful, and the town became more aware. They knew they had to protect their children because some people, like Nurse Bola, were driven by selfishness and greed. From that day on, mothers everywhere were more conscious, ensuring that they knew everything happening in the hospitals where they gave birth. They learned to never let anyone take their baby away without a good reason, and they began to speak up whenever something felt wrong. The hospital was later reopened under new management, and Dr. Keke made sure that all the nurses and doctors were honest and kind. Hope Clinic became a safe place again, where mothers could give birth without fear. The story of the baby swappers was told to every new mother so they would know to always be careful. And so, the town of Lagru became a safer place for children and mothers. The people learned to trust but also to verify. They learned that sometimes things are not what they seem and they must be conscious. Thank you guys for watching my stories, and please come back for more stories. I love you.